Hi, my name is Benjamin, and I'm the developer behind Phrasing. Phrasing is a language learning application that I've been building now for over 3 years. It's simple, addictive, and wildly effective. It works in over 90 languages and 40 dialects. Today, I'm going to show you how to get set up in Phrasing, go over the major features, and give you some tips and tricks that you can use to get the most out of Phrasing from day one. What you see on screen now is my own personal account. I've been using Phrasing nearly every single day for over 12 months to learn a variety of languages. I've been testing it to make sure it works in every major language family I support. That includes more common languages like Japanese and Chinese to less common languages like Turkish and Croatian. It includes dialectal languages like Arabic, Portuguese, and Spanish. And it includes several low resource languages such as Lithuanian, Cantonese, Macedonian, and Maltese. It doesn't matter which language you're learning or how many languages you're learning. Making progress is as simple as opening the app. And with over 33,000 reviews completed this year alone, I'm very happy with my progress. So let me show you how you can get set up with Phrasing. So let me switch over to a new account I just created with Phrasing. The first thing I see is a welcome card asking me to complete the onboarding. Let's go ahead and complete this together. The onboarding is going to walk us through the three major concepts behind phrasing. Once you learn these, you'll have everything you need to learn a language. We'll cover expressions, which are what you learn in the application. Then we'll cover bookmarks, which is how you control what you learn. And lastly, we'll cover extractions, which is how you can create new material to learn yourself. Let's go ahead and get started. First, we need to configure our languages. In phrasing, languages you're learning are called target languages. Go ahead and select whichever languages you're learning here. Do know phrasing is optimized for learning multiple languages, so if you're learning or maintaining multiple languages, go ahead and select them all here. You can also configure various reference languages. These are the languages that we teach you your target languages from. If you speak another language besides English natively, or if you're doing language laddering, you can add them here. However, we'll leave it on the default English selected for now. The first core concept we're going to cover is expressions, and these are your new best friend. Expressions are just pieces of text that you'll use to learn a language. They contain everything they need to be understood. What makes expressions unique is it allows you to learn a language from fully native, fully complex sentences from day one. Expressions should be longer than you feel comfortable with. We recommend that expressions be roughly 20 words long to start with. Let's go ahead and take a look at an expression in action. At the bottom of the screen, you can see your first expression. You can see your target language at the top and a reference language down below. Every single word in an expression is fully interactive, which means if there's anything you don't understand, you can just click. As I click around, you'll notice a couple different things happening. First off, the phrase the word belongs to is highlighted, and the corresponding phrase is highlighted in the reference language down below. Learning languages via phrases like this is an incredibly effective way to learn a language and where phrasing gets its name. You'll also notice that information is populated in the heads-up display. This includes the pronunciation, translations, as well as core grammar highlights like word roots and grammatical features. This is only scratching the surface of the information expressions contain. If there's ever a word you want to find out more about, click on the reader icon down below. Here, you'll find a full, detailed explanation with answers to questions you didn't even know you had. For example, we can see that narimas means will become and belongs to the root naru. It's not used literally and is part of a fixed construction, so we can read about its idiomatic interpretation here. We can see how the word was constructed and why it's constructed this way in this particular expression. Lastly, we can see that it's a regular verb and read about some alternatives and the nuances between them. These explanations are dynamic and change based on the word and the language. For example, if we select a word with a Chinese character, we'll see character breakdowns, going over the constituents and how they come together to form the individual character. Being able to understand any word at a tap was great, but it didn't allow me to understand the full complexity of expressions. For that, I had to build the Shapes feature. If you click on the Shapes icon, it'll open the same expression in a different view, in large, color-coded, easy-to-read letters. Here you can see the pronunciation for every single word, as well as word-by-word translations, both figurative and literal. They're split and grouped into semantic chunks, and each chunk is explained. This allows you to understand the expression as a collection of larger sequential pieces. And every word is still explained down below. Pro tip, if you click on the word explanation, it'll minimize the chunks up above. From here, we can tap around and start to fit together this expression as a collection of larger pieces. We can read about individual chunks or individual words anytime we want to learn more, until we feel like we have a good grasp on the expression. Next up is learning how the expression is pronounced. For that, every expression comes with the highest quality text-to-speech on the market. The audio is then synced with the text, so as you play it back, you'll see the current word highlighted on screen as it occurs, karaoke style.
毎日いくつか単語を覚えていけば、気がつかないうちにその言語を話せるようになりますよ。
Being able to hear and see the audio like this is an incredibly effective way to build your comprehension. To work on your pronunciation, select any word and click on the heads-up display. This will start to play the audio in a loop.
その言語を話せるよ。その言語を話せるよ。その言語を話せるよ。その言語
The word and its surrounding context will keep playing until you hit pause. I'll use this feature in two ways. I'll either try to speak in time with the audio, or I'll try to speak in the pause in between the audio. Both of these are great ways to practice your pronunciation. I'll sometimes play these loops 10, 20, or even 30 times, trying to really drill down words that I struggle with. And the last thing to cover with expressions is navigating between languages. You can swipe between different languages, tap on the flag to cycle between them, or tap on the arrows in the top right of the expression to see all your translations on one screen. This screen is really cool because it lets phrases shine. You can tap around on different words and see how the phrases correlate across all your translations in all your languages. So now let's find out how we can start to learn expressions. And to do so, we need to bookmark some. Bookmarking is just the process of telling phrasing, I want to learn this expression. Once you do so, it'll automatically start to appear in your reviews. To get started with phrasing, I've created over 100 demo expressions. These were handwritten, but machine translated, so if you're learning a smaller language, there may be some mistakes. It's worth mentioning that expressions are translated relatively, not literally. One of the advantages of learning from phrases is that you don't need awkward literal translations. You can choose the most natural translations for each of the languages, and we'll match them up perfectly. Here we can see some of the demo expressions that I've created. You can click around on any word and see the information just like normal. If you want to learn the expression, just click on the bookmark and choose Bookmark All. Bookmarks work on a per translation basis, meaning that you don't need to bookmark every language for every expression. You can choose one at a time which languages you want to learn. In order for it to appear in your reviews, you do need to bookmark at least one target language and at least one reference language. In this expression, we can see an example of relative translations. Whenever I use the name of a language, I've adapted it to be the name of the language that the translation is in. That means in English, it's English, Turkish, Turkce, Spanish, Español, and Japanese, Nihongo. This allows you to use very natural translations for every expression. If you ever do need access to a literal translation, you do have the word-by-word translation available in the Shapes feature for every expression. Let's go ahead and bookmark this. That should be 3 expressions, so we can continue on to the next step. The last core concept to cover is extractions. Expressions are really cool and extremely useful, but the best part is how easy they are to create. You can just copy-paste any text into phrasing, and we can turn it into an expression. Creating your own expressions is critical to learning a language. You're never going to be able to learn a language from somebody else's deck, somebody else's list, or somebody else's course. When you complete the onboarding process, there's an activity you can complete to learn to introduce yourself and extract your own expressions relevant to you. We'll skip that for now, and I'll let you do that on your own. The last screen just gives a little information about our spaced repetition system. This is where you'll be spending the most time in phrasing. If you haven't used spaced repetition before, you can think of it as an algorithm for your memory. It makes sure that everything you see, you memorize and remember forever. Phrasing spaced repetition is unique in that we start teaching you one word at a time and work our way up to full phrases. It's also unique in that it's built to be addictive. We focus on human psychology and making the most enjoyable experience possible, because if you do more reviews, you'll learn more language. And lastly, it's unique in that it's optimized for multiple languages. Whether you're learning or maintaining multiple languages, you can up to double your recall using our methods. And with that, we've completed the onboarding. When you click on the button below, it'll open up our default review mode, our command mode. I'm going to show you around the interface, explain how it works, as well as give you some tips and tricks that I've developed over the years to get the most out of phrasing. You'll see not only how it works, but how I use the application myself. Once the page loads, we'll see an expression that we've bookmarked, and we'll notice that there's one word missing. This is the word that phrasing has picked to be the best word for me to learn at this moment. We can also see the phrase highlighted that this word belongs to, and the corresponding phrase highlighted in the reference language below. My first piece of advice would be to focus on just the highlighted phrase. The entire expression is here for context and for exposure, but the phrase is highlighted to give you something to focus on. Piece to focus on relation for the missing word. We recommend that you click around the words and try to figure out the missing word from context. This is called contextualized learning, and it's substantially more effective for learning languages. Once you've figured out the missing word, you can go ahead and type it in with whichever keyboard you have available. For example, even though this is Japanese, I can type in the word with a QWERTY keyboard. If you don't know the answer, or if you don't have access to the keyboard, you can use the buttons down below. Just click on Reveal.
こんにちは。フレイジングへようこそ。私はスターリングと申します。何かお手伝いできることはございますか？
As you saw, when we clicked on Reveal, it played the full sentence audio. This allows us to get exposure to the entire expression, even though we're just focusing on these targeted phrases. Now, because Otetsudai was a new word, the first thing I always do is read through all of the explanations. There's tons of great information in here, and I'm not trying to remember or even understand everything I read. I'm just trying to get a grasp on this word, and oftentimes there's one or two pieces of information in here that really help me remember the word from day one. Once I've finished reading, I close this, and I really just focus on trying to remember the pronunciation. This is my second piece of advice. Just focus on the pronunciation to start with. Every time I see this word, I'll focus on remembering something more. Maybe next I'll try to remember the translation, and after that, the characters, and after that, some of the grammar. However, the first time I see a card, I put all of that aside, and I just try to remember the pronunciation. I come up with mnemonics, I repeat it over and over, I do anything I can to remember the sounds. It can almost feel like cheating, like I'm not trying to really learn the language, I'm just trying to memorize random sounds. But I promise you, you'll be seeing this word a lot. And each time you see it, you'll remember more and more. It's best to start simple and work your way up to the full complexity of the word. Since I didn't know this word, I'll choose forgot.
¿Qué has dicho? No lo entiendo. ¿Puedes repetirlo un poco?
And so just like before, we see an expression with one word missing. And our job is to fill this word in. My third piece of advice is to, whenever possible, use the keyboard. Even if you're not sure about your answer, type in a guess. This is substantially more effective for learning a language. However, if you don't have access to a keyboard, or if you just want to fly through some reviews, you can use the buttons down below at any time. They work the same in the application, it's just less effective for learning.
¿Qué has dicho? No lo entiendo. ¿Puedes repetirlo un poco más despacio?
I can use the buttons to quickly mark it as remembered or forgotten. If you want access to more grades, you can find them in the override section. If you're not familiar with these different grades, then I'd recommend just using forgot and remembered for now. One of the coolest parts of reviews in phrasing is that every single word is gradable at any time. For example, let's say I didn't know the word puedes. I can select it and mark it as forgotten. This is a great way to laser focus the spaced repetition system on the words that you want to learn most. I recommend reserving this as a strong signal. I would not recommend grading every single word in every single review. That's going to be too much noise. My fourth piece of advice is that I normally use this process of grading individual words when I get a word right for the first time in a day. If you get a word wrong, or if you mark it as wrong in this manner, you're going to see this word again today as a review in this context. Since we got despacio correct, we're not going to see this expression to review that word, which means we can now use this expression today to review the word puedes. Algorithmically, there's no difference between grading a word manually or grading a word that was picked. There's also no difference between typing a word in, using the buttons below, using the inline buttons, or using the overrides modal. They all result in the same grades, and I use them interchangeably. You may have noticed that we're jumping around between different languages, so let me show you how you can configure that. If you tap on the flag in the top left, you can open up your language configurations. This is how you can configure which languages you want to see and what amounts. For example, let's say I want to learn some Turkish, more Japanese, but mostly Spanish. I can open up this modal and configure my priorities, and phrasing will automatically balance my reviews to make sure that I'm achieving my goals. We leverage two memory principles, called interleaving and batching, to make sure that you remember more, are engaged more, and actually mix up the languages less. If you want to study just one language at a time, you can come in and turn on focus mode. I'll use this most often when I'm just feeling a language for a short session. So I don't change the language priorities, and you can come in and just turn off the focus mode whenever you're ready to return to normal reviews. It's also worth mentioning that you can put languages in maintenance mode. This isn't recommended in the beginning, as first you have to learn the words with phrasing before we can put a language in maintenance mode. However, in the future, it's an option. This is also where you can configure reference languages. And it's worth mentioning that you can have a language as both a target language and a reference language at the same time. The last feature to mention in reviews is the ability to chat with an LLM. If you still have any questions about your expression, you can tap on a paper plane and open up access to a large language model with the expression attached as context. And with that, you have everything you need to learn a language with phrasing. There's one thing that I'd like to mention here at the end, and that's the idea of three-dimensional reviews. The first dimension in reviews is time. You're going to see reviews over and over at increasing intervals. The second dimension is the individual words. Every single word and every expression is learnable, and you'll learn them over time. The third dimension, though, is effort, or depth. You can either blow through quickly and do your reviews, leaning on the spaced repetition system to show you the most optimal words at the most optimal moment. Or you can take your time and really read through every single word, play back the audio, work on your pronunciation, open up the shapes feature, and understand how the entire expression fits together. This third dimension is what makes phrasing so unique. It allows you to follow your interests, and anytime you're curious, you can tap, explore, and learn. And before we leave this screen, one of the most common questions I get is, why don't I show the number of reviews on the review screen? And the answer to that is very simple. I have a goal of 100 reviews per day. Once I added that number to the review screen, I never exceeded that goal. Once I took it away, I always went over my goal. And so for that reason, I keep it hidden. You can tap on the dashboard to see how many reviews you've done in one of my favorite screens, because every particle you see correlates to a real review of a word you've done. To quickly cover the remaining pages in the application, we have the profile. This is where you can find all of the expressions you have bookmarked and have ever bookmarked. Next is the islands feature. This is where you can find collections of expressions that you've created, others have created, or that I created myself. For example, this is where you can find the over 100 demo expressions that I mentioned earlier. Again, these were handwritten, but AI translated. So if you're learning a smaller language, be aware there might be some mistakes. These expressions are intended to help you pad out your library in the beginning and to show you how to use phrasing. They're not intended to be sufficient to learn a language themselves. Next up is the Learn screen. Currently, we offer two learning modalities. There's the command mode, which we covered earlier in this welcome video. There's also the immerse mode. This is an audio-only way to review your expressions, kind of like putting all of your expressions on a playlist. It's great for shadowing, mirroring, or just general exposure. However, a majority of your time should be spent in the command mode. To create your own expressions, you use Sterling, our chatbot. There are two ways to create expressions. You can either import them, like copy-paste, or you can generate them. Generating is the easiest way to get expressions. You just type in a topic, and we'll make sure that we generate the highest quality expressions possible. We'll make sure that they're varied, and they follow all of the best principles for expressions. It takes just a moment, and you can extract them in a single click if you decide you want to learn it. Since if you're learning a language, you might not know which expressions you want to learn, we generate some pretty detailed explanations ahead of time to help you make an informed decision. Of course, the best and most reliable way to create expressions is to import them. You can do this by copy-pasting them from transcripts, books, audio, or conversations with other people. Just paste them into the chat interface, we'll format them into expressions, and you can extract them. And with that, you have everything you need to hit the ground running with phrasing. If you have any other questions, you can find various different ways to contact me from the home shields in the dashboard. Here, you can find access to our public Telegram channel. This is where I release occasional updates whenever something major changes in the application. You can also access our Reddit community should you have any questions or want to participate in any discussions. There are links to my X account. You can contact me here. I don't post very often, but I do receive any messages. And lastly, but not least, there's our private Telegram community. Any paying users to Phrasing get access to Phrasing HQ. This is where you can interact with other members, interact with me, support each other, and share your wins. It's a lot of fun, and it's by far the best way to get in touch with me. Hopefully, you give Phrasing a try and enjoy it as much as I have, and share your wins in Phrasing HQ. To fluency and beyond.